I sat at the defense table in the county courthouse with my attorney by my side. As the jury was about to enter, my lawyer cautioned me about the possibility of facing multiple years behind bars if found guilty of the charges. I did it because I felt I had no other option. Yes, I may have gone a bit overboard, but what would you do if you were me? I think I need to start from the beginning to make things clear. Do you know why I'm here today? My wife Rose and I got married when we were older. She was 32 and I was 34. Rose was always strikingly beautiful, and I was smitten from the moment we met. After several challenging months, we started dating. I took the relationship seriously, and we got married a year later. We had both been through our share of relationships before, and I thought our age and experiences would work in our favor. Things were good for the first 3 years. Rose didn't work and was happy staying at home. We discussed having kids, and since she enjoyed not working, I didn't pressure her. We were financially stable, and I was eager to begin a family. I preferred she didn't start a career if she would soon leave it to care for our children. Rose was naturally cheerful and sociable, which often led other men to misinterpret her friendliness as flirtation, nearly causing me to engage in altercations. At times I wondered if Rose acted this way to provoke me, but I never took the bait. I hated conflict and always sought to avoid it, adhering to the principle of turning the other cheek. This avoidance of confrontation persisted until 2 months ago. I've always steered clear of fights or challenges, not because I'm weak, as some might think, but because I was following my father's advice from my youth. My academic performance was always strong until we relocated to my current city, far from where I grew up. I had to say goodbye to my teachers, friends, and everything I loved about my old town. I was in 8th grade, and the new school felt large and intimidating. I kept quiet about it to spare my dad any guilt, as he moved us for financial reasons. My mom had passed away 2 years prior, and Dad was still grieving. Rose, don't. The school seemed to be under the control of an a-hole named Tommy Bollinger, who took an instant dislike to me. On my first day, as I was about to catch the bus home, a tall figure blocked my path. Initially, I didn't see him, but after being shoved to the ground, I looked up to see someone who appeared to be a giant to me. At that time, I was merely 5'3", and now I've grown to 5'7". This towering figure, along with his slightly shorter companions, demanded I get up, hand over my backpack, and any cash I had. Standing up slowly, I felt more scared than ever before. I was so terrified that I accidentally wet my jeans, which, looking back, might have actually prevented them from offending me. "What's your name, loser?" Tommy asked with obvious disdain. "Pete Huckabee," I replied, clearly frightened. "Well, you've just earned yourself a new nickname here. From this moment, you're PC Pete Ash. Hey everyone, check out PC Pete over here. He just wet himself like a little kid," Tommy announced to the onlookers. Glancing around, I saw everyone laughing at me. Overwhelmed with fear, I ran all the way home, skipping the bus ride. Tommy continued to harass me from then on. He was a junior, so I had to endure his offense until he finally graduated a year later. Those first 2 years were miserable for me. No girl would go out with me because of the PC Pete nickname, no matter what I did. That label followed me, making every day at school a challenge. I was constantly targeted. I believed I was a decent person, but the treatment I received at school made me question that. I eagerly awaited Tommy's graduation, hoping for relief from his unending offense. Tommy never showed any kindness towards his victims, including me. He seemed to thrive on causing fear and misery. After Tommy finally left school, my senior year became somewhat bearable, with only a few a-holes still calling me PC Pete. I managed to graduate at the top of my class, giving the valedictorian speech. I went on to a reputable college and became a design engineer. When I attempted to discuss it with my dad, he immediately offered to intervene at school, but I knew that would likely exacerbate the situation. Hoping the offense might subside on its own, I asked to wait a few more days before taking any action. He agreed, and I falsely reassured him that things had improved when he inquired a few days later. School was definitely not enjoyable. Rose managed to adjust after the first couple of months at my new school. By the time I made it home that day, I was so upset I felt I might lose control. My younger brother, the only sibling I have, had taken something from me, though I can't recall what it was anymore. All I knew was that he became my unintended target. Our argument caught the attention of my father, who was in the next room. All the issues I'd been facing suddenly erupted. In my anger, I shoved my brother against the wall and raised my fist as if to strike him. He managed to dodge at the last moment, and my fist went through the wall instead. Our house was quite old, with plaster walls and wooden slats behind them, resulting in a 3-foot hole, and even breaking 2 slats right where my brother's head had been. Seeing the damage, my dad came into the room and was horrified. My brother was in tears and screaming that I could have seriously hurt him. "Go to your room this instant. You're grounded for 2 months, he declared. So there I was, grounded and still facing troubles at school. Those 2 months felt like an eternity. My dad made it clear how dangerous losing my temper could be, even to the point of causing fatal harm. The possibility of seriously injuring my brother was a sobering realization that has influenced me to this day, leading me to prefer walking away over engaging in conflict. Now, with some context about my background, let me share what happened 3 months ago. I usually call home before lunch since Rose prepares it for me, but I forgot to call that day. My workplace is only a 20-minute drive from home, making it feasible to return for lunch within my hour break. When I arrived, I found Rose cleaning the living room carpet, which was marred by size 13 muddy footprints leading from our front to our back bedroom. "Rose, who caused this mess on our new carpet?" I inquired. She explained that Leo, our building manager, had a new employee inspect the smoke detectors, who had walked in with muddy shoes and failed to clean them. Her explanation seemed rehearsed. "Well, I'll have a word with Leo about this the first chance I get. We have white carpets, and this should have been obvious," I retorted. "Don't fuss over it, Peter. I'll speak with him. Let me handle it," she assured me. After finishing my lunch, I didn't give it another thought. Later that week, I saw Leo coming out of another apartment building and called him over for a chat. "Hey Leo, how's it going? It's been some time since we last talked," I said. We casually chatted about sports and the weather until I remembered the incident I wanted to address. "Leo, the other day, your new guy came to check the smoke detectors in my apartment and left mud all over my white carpet," I mentioned. Leo quickly corrected me with slight irritation. "First off, he's not my new guy." He took a moment before continuing. "Sorry, Pete. This guy's been a real headache for me, too, and it's rare for me to get upset. His name is Tom, something with a B. I can't recall. Corporate sent him over after I mentioned needing some help. He was supposed to assist me part-time." Leo went on to explain how this Tom arrived, acting as if he was in charge, outlining our schedules and how things were supposed to run. I had to firmly remind him of his actual duties here, which he didn't take well. He has this intense look that makes you think he could snap at any moment. I was about to give him his walking papers right there, but he still had that look in his eye. I was convinced that if I had fired him, he might have ended me, or possibly done something even worse. I'm planning to contact corporate to have them terminate him. He was hired for his supposed skills with tools, but in my opinion, he was trouble from the very beginning, Leo shared with me. "Also, Pete, I checked your smoke detectors myself 3 weeks ago and told your wife that the 2 at the back needed new batteries, which I then replaced for her," Leo continued. "There was no reason for Tom to be checking the smoke alarms. That's not part of his duties." Leo's tone was clearly devoid of any affection, leaving me with doubts after our conversation. But then, I got distracted and forgot about it until another event caught my attention a few weeks later. While searching for another pair of sneakers in my closet, and recalling I had left them under the bed, I discovered size 13 muddy shoe prints under my wife's side of the bed, identical to those I had seen my wife cleaning before. These prints could only have been made by someone who took off their shoes and placed them there intentionally. My wife usually moves my shoes as a habit, but it seems she missed cleaning up these particular tracks on the same day. While grabbing socks from my drawer, I noticed some that weren't mine. They were size 13, much too large for my feet, and in a color I'd never buy. Trying them on felt absurd, but the laugh faded as I pondered the significance of finding them. How did another person's socks get into my drawer? The more I thought about it, the more worried I became. Then, my neighbor, Mrs. Adams, who lives right across the hall, inquired one day, "Have they finished fixing your place yet?" Confused, I replied, "Sally, I'm not sure what you mean. I wasn't aware anything needed repair." She hinted, "Well, that tall handyman seems to be fixing things in your apartment quite a bit. You might want to check with your wife." Her knowing look said a lot more than her words. Although Sally was known to be nosy, she often knew everything going on in our building. Her comment might have been a subtle warning for me to pay attention. For months, I had doubts about my wife's loyalty. It was the small things that suggested she might be unfaithful. Calls would hang up when I answered. Sometimes her clothes seemed to carry the scent of cologne. I confronted her about it once, and she reassured me that I was the only one for her, showing no signs of deceit. I took her word for it and tried to put my suspicions to rest. In hindsight, I should have delved deeper, but my complete trust in her held me back. Reading through this, Rose might think, wow, he's really naive. But in my defense, my love and trust for Rose blinded me. I also think part of me wanted to avoid any conflict with her. That's how things stood until one day everything changed. Feeling unwell, I left work early, not even staying for lunch. The moment I entered our one-story apartment, I could tell something was amiss. Our bedroom is situated at the back of the house, making it impossible to hear if someone knocks at the front door or enters the house. As I moved towards the bedroom, I heard sounds. Rose was clearly in pleasure, accompanied by a man's voice complimenting her. I realized the situation was serious, but the full extent hit me only when I understood who she was with. It's unbelievable your husband hasn't caught on to your actions. Were you mine, I'd keep you under lock and key when I'm away, the male voice boasted, praising Rose's prowess and joking about her skills. The man, identified as Tommy, egged Rose on, dismissing the possibility of my arrival. Rose pleaded with him to hurry, fearing I might return for lunch. Why worry? Tommy dismissed, claiming he could easily handle me, calling me a pushover. Rose attempted to defend me, insisting that despite my gentle nature, I was genuinely a decent person, albeit with little conviction in her voice. Realizing she viewed me as weak was profoundly painful. The realization that the most important woman in your life perceives you as feeble is indescribably devastating. I don't even remember making the decision to do it, but just before I reached the bedroom door, I instinctively activated my tiny video and sound recorder. This device, no larger than a lighter and easily concealed in a shirt pocket, was initially used for work purposes. My boss, Bill, had been claiming my work as his own and undermining me in meetings to elevate his own status. At the suggestion of close friends, I started recording our interactions to document his wrongdoing. He regularly disparaged me, likely thinking I was too meek to retaliate. While the recorder was on, Tommy made threats against me. I recognized that voice, unleashing a wave of old memories. No, it can't be him, I thought to myself. I've had enough. Approaching the open bedroom door, I was confronted with the sight of Tommy Bollinger, the bad guy from my high school days, being intimate with my wife. That scene is etched in my memory forever. How can I articulate what I felt in that moment? I was paralyzed, witnessing the betrayal by my wife with the very person I loathed more than anyone else. My feelings for my wife turned to disdain, and my hatred for Tommy intensified. I stood there immobile as he continued his actions. Suddenly snapping back to reality, overcome with emotion, I confronted Rose. What do you think you're doing? Get out of my apartment! I shouted at them with a level of anger I'd never heard in my own voice before. The look on my face probably conveyed my fury clearer than any words could. I felt angrier than I had ever been. Rose, for her part, wore a dismissive expression, almost as if to say, "So what? What are you going to do about it? You never act," she seemed to challenge, underestimating my resolve. My wife only showed a flicker of shock before settling into a defiant stare. Tommy, for his part, just stared back at me, starting to laugh dismissively. "You're kidding! You married PC Pete? Wow, now I see why you were never worried," he laughed at me. Rose turned to Tommy with confusion, seeking clarity on the insulting nickname he used for me. "Rose, your pathetic husband was at my high school. He wet himself. That's how we first encountered each other. Obviously, he never shared that story with you. He only brought up that tiny detail to embarrass me in front of my wife, and it seemed to have its intended effect. My wife regarded me as if I was barely a man. Clearly, his tactics succeeded. I used to give him a hard time every week. He couldn't handle even a bit of trouble. After I'm done being intimate with your wife in every way possible, you can try to step up like a real man. But until then, just wait outside until I'm through," he commanded me. My wife simply shifted her gaze between us, silent. In that moment, I was certain our relationship was over. And just so you know, PC Pete, I'm working right now, and your rent checks are paying my wages. So, in a twisted way, you're funding this situation. How's that for a kick in the teeth? Tommy taunted, reveling in the cruelty of his words. He went back to being intimate with my wife, who simply averted her gaze. I'm telling you this once. Get out of my apartment, I shouted at him, bracing myself for any retaliation from Tommy. I was seething with anger, practically trembling. Looks like PCP finally grew a backbone, he said. I'll sort that out. You had your chance to walk away, but now you're going to get something, Tommy threatened, as he disengaged from my wife and moved toward me at the doorway. It's strange, but encountering someone from your school days can trick you into thinking they haven't changed. However, Tommy underestimated me. After high school, one of my college professors suggested I take up martial arts to build my confidence. I found myself enjoying it and started training in judo, kickboxing, and various karate disciplines. I committed to training at the kickboxing club twice a week and hit the gym at least once a week. This has been my routine for the last 6 years. Rose never accompanied me, likely thinking I was just using the stair-stepper or something similar at the gym. In reality, I engaged in sparring sessions twice a week. At first, it was hard to convince me to spar with someone, haunted by the memory of my brother's frightened face when I almost hit him years ago. My instructors explained it as akin to learning how to read without ever opening a book, a comparison that resonated with me. Eventually, I began to spar and became pretty skilled at it. I always held back my power, never wanting to cause harm. My quickness was identified as my main strength. All the anger and frustration that had built up over the years suddenly erupted. When Tommy came at me, his movements seemed sluggish for his size. Dodging to the right, I avoided his blow entirely. That's when I made my move, and I heard cracking sound. I felt no remorse. I was only beginning. Tommy, in pain, tried his best again with his other arm and body, but I simply sidestepped, causing him to fall into the doorframe. Then, standing by his head, I did what I had to. Meanwhile, my wife was screaming from the bed, covered up with only her head visible. I paid her no mind and focused on handling the situation. My actions might seem harsh, but Tommy never showed mercy or restraint to anyone. He was a total a-hole, and I felt no pity as I dealt with him as the enemy he was. Rose watched me, a mix of fear and astonishment in her eyes. Throughout our time together, I had never once shown aggression, even when other men flirted with her. I sometimes wondered if she did that deliberately to test my reaction, thinking of me as weak. However, the look on her face now made it clear she no longer held that belief. She witnessed me taking down a guy who's been spreading lies about me, all while she provocatively engaged with other men in my presence. I was fully aware of her intentions. Remember the time at the downtown bar? I didn't intervene because I thought that's what you wanted, but if you've ever questioned whether I was as tough or strong as those other guys, well, they might be physically bigger, but they're just as beatable as your a-hole boyfriend. And now, Rose, understand this. A true man knows when to walk away from a fight, confident in the victory he could have claimed. My temper almost led to a tragic incident with my younger brother Billy once, teaching me the importance of controlling it. That's the hallmark of a genuine man, not the disgraceful behavior displayed by the guy now lying on the ground. You made a fundamental error, Rose, in mistaking my gentleness for weakness, I explained to my wife. I've always shown you love and respect, but that's all in the past now. You've betrayed me, Rose, and I need you to leave as soon as I'm out. Your next steps don't concern me. If you ever come back here, I'll ensure the consequences are far worse than what your boyfriend experienced. My words were fueled by the deepest anger I've ever felt towards her. All she did was stare back at me with wide eyes, speechless. Without another word, I left our apartment, resolved never to interact with her again. For some odd reason, I went back to work, which strangely felt more like home than my actual apartment did. About 30 minutes later, the police showed up and escorted me downtown. News had rapidly circulated about how I had defeated a much larger man, sending him to the hospital. The altercation with Tommy didn't even leave me with a scratch or feel like a real workout. As the police were handcuffing me, I warned my boss, Bill, "You're next, you traitor. I'll be back," channeling the same intense anger I harbored towards Rose. He looked scared after catching wind of the rumors about the tough guy who I had fought. I spent the rest of the day at the police station until a good friend bailed me out. When I got back to work, I decided to confront my boss, thinking I had nothing left to lose. However, I learned he had resigned and wouldn't be coming back. Then I was called into a meeting with the company's president. "Peter, I respect your work, but you can't be getting into fights and intimidating my staff," he told me. I shared the details of the incident in my apartment and my boss's actions, mentioning I had video evidence of him stealing my ideas and designs. He didn't say much, but gave me a knowing smile. "Peter, I always sensed you had a strong character hidden behind that calm demeanor," he said. "Bill was a problem, and his departure was inevitable. You've actually done us a service. Plus, you're unique in developing 3 distinct proposals for budget-minded clients, including all the costs and labor estimates. When Bill tried to pass off your work as his own, it was clear he was fraudulently claiming your achievements as his," he shared, smiling wider. "Here's my lawyer's contact information. He's excellent and can assist with both the offense charges and your divorce. Once everything's settled, and assuming you're not incarcerated, your position here remains secure. However, you need to keep your distance from this place until all legal matters are concluded. Peter, did you actually take down those big guys? And was one of them involved with your wife?" he asked, his smile growing. "Yeah, but the whole thing was over in about 2 minutes. Hardly broke a sweat," I replied, chuckling. "Well, good luck, Peter, and keep me posted," he finally said, offering me a handshake before I left. Back at my apartment, I found it empty. Carrie had cleared out her belongings. I wasn't bothered by what she took, but in a rush of anxiety, I hurried to the bedroom to check. And there it was, next to the dresser, my little pocket recorder still running. This brings me to where I am now, in a courtroom, waiting for a jury of 12 to decide if I'll be spending my lunchtimes behind bars for the next 6 to 10 years. I braced for any outcome, not expecting an acquittal given how badly Tommy had gotten to me. I faced a slew of charges framed in complex legal jargon. Basically, it boiled down to the fact that I began this fight, but the detailed account of Tommy's injuries they read out was far from pleasant. Tommy experienced significant damages. I'm not going to list everything, I'm just going to say he lost several teeth, both upper and lower, and 1 testicle is missing. Every time Tommy appeared in court, he was wheeled in, swathed in bandages. I knew I should feel remorse, but sympathy was hard to muster for him. In court, I maintained a composed and serious demeanor, yet the jury seemed to struggle with the image of me. A 5'7" design architect at 185 pounds was severely messing up this much larger 6'3" man. As the jury filed in and took their seats, I looked up, awaiting their verdict. The jury foreman stood up as the court was called to order, and when the judge asked if they had reached a verdict, the foreman confirmed, "Yes, Your Honor." He announced that I was found not guilty on all charges, causing a stir in the courtroom. He even winked at me, which took me a moment to fully grasp. The company's president then turned around to congratulate me and suggested I take the rest of the week off, planning to see me back at work on Monday. I thanked him, receiving congratulations and hugs from friends and others. Leo was also there, cheering me on, and even making a rude gesture towards Tommy, who had a memorable look on his face. As I left the courtroom with my lawyer, I couldn't resist gesturing rudely at Tommy myself, noticing his desire for revenge despite his current incapacity. His glare was empty threats. Walking out, I couldn't help but smile, feeling liberated and completely vindicated. As I made my way out of the hallway, I spotted the jury foreman waiting for me. He signaled for me to come over for a chat. "Hello, Mr. Huckabee. I'm Harry Peterson. It's a relief you were cleared of all charges. The jury unanimously felt you acted in self-defense. From my perspective, you had nothing to fear. That's why I accepted the role of foreman, to ensure your freedom. The video evidence of the incident was the clincher we needed," he shared quietly. Confused, I questioned his motives, to which he responded with a smile, offering his hand for a shake. "Mr. Huckabee, I went to your high school a year before you. I remember how Tommy treated people, myself included. Tommy picked on me until my mother transferred me to another school. He turned my life into a nightmare as long as I was there, causing trauma to many others too. He didn't even recognize me. I saw what he did to you as well. In the end, he got what was coming to him. Good luck going forward, Peter. Just remember, not every a-hole gets to win, Just look at Tommy." He shared this, then walked off with a big grin. Right after, my wife approached, hoping to talk. I refused, suggesting she move on because I planned to as well. "I do love you, Rose, but I can't ever go back to how things were. It's too painful to even put into words." With that, I walked away, leaving her behind in the hallway. The video I recorded captured Tommy mocking me and refusing to leave, while my wife remained silent. The jury interpreted her silence as agreement with my side of the story. Tommy was told to leave once more, but Rose didn't react. Then, he jumped on me. The video shows the fight right up to the point where I pushed him into the doorframe, after which the recorder ended up face down next to the dresser. Watching the playback and listening to the audio from when the police arrived, it was clear my wife claimed I instigated the altercation. Later on, you could hear her rehearsing to herself the conversation she planned with me, fabricating her version of events. It seemed she felt no remorse for her infidelity. Importantly, Tommy inadvertently confessed on the recording that he was engaged in personal activities on company time, meaning his employer's insurance wouldn't cover his injuries. Last I heard, he ended up in a rehab facility far away due to his behavior. Tommy's life was forever altered. His family had to pay for his medical expenses. Moreover, upon my return to work that next Monday, I discovered my office had been cleared and my belongings had been relocated to Bill's former office. I had taken over Bill's previous position, effectively becoming my own boss, which felt incredibly rewarding. Additionally, I suddenly found myself gaining attention from the women at work. Within my first week in the new role, 4 of them approached me to ask me out on dates. Yes, they were the ones who asked me out. Can you imagine that? Later on, I discovered that the company president had been spreading rumors about me being a former Special Forces operative who occasionally worked as a government spy when not busy with design projects. My colleagues, especially the women, were all over the story, leading to me being seen as some sort of enigmatic figure. Quite the turn of events. After the divorce from Rose, I've started dating a few women from work, as well as others outside the office. I do miss her, but remembering her with Tommy makes it impossible for me to want to reconnect. I'm grateful for everyone who's reached out or considered sharing their own stories or those of others with me. Stay safe.